and the affair is serious. The affair doesn't have to be so serious that it's depressingly or incapacitatingly difficult. I think that one person to understand, how one can maybe pursue or get to a way where one could be pursuing sort of Sirhindian view of things is where one decides that really you want to place the value of what you think is a worthy objective of your life. And for me personally, I don't think there's anything much more interesting than God. Therefore, it doesn't bother me to make that sort of an obsession in my life. Perhaps I have. My wife calls it my hobby. She says, this is my hobby. I don't know quite what she means by that. She's, she's a good woman, but I think sometimes she thinks my pursuit of these things is like it's not the real, life is maybe more than this or something, but I just don't agree with that. So I like my hobby, so I'm going to keep it. But that was just not asked, was this idea of maybe in a Western context, people have a sense of entitlement, or how would you describe that? What's your question, sir? Say that again.
The question was that you said that in spite of sins, we may feel that Allah will forgive us, and we have hope that we can be better or do better or come closer to Allah. But then what I'm kind of asked the question is that in the Western thought, there's a lot of false idea of, oh, I'm worth something, just because I think something, I deserve something, and that sense of self. I'm not sure what the question is.
Okay.
You can distinguish the two. So that
okay, for me, I really believe this, because you will have heard this from me in Houston when I was an Imam and giving Jummah bayans and every Friday. This type of stuff you would have heard me say, this type of conversation would be something that would be a bayan for me. But it was I think I was shooting over the congregant's head, hearing this. But I couldn't help but talk about what I talk about. I believe personally that we are entitled to these things, not because it's some self-centered delusion, it's because of our Adamic nature. As sons and daughters of Adam, this is our legacy. This is our birthright. The fact that you are a Muslim and you have this formal relationship with Muhammad ﷺ means that this is something that is offered to you, that was not offered to before you. The status of Muhammad ﷺ is a status, and this gets me off into a larger discussion here. Now, but I have to explain this, so that I don't go way out there and it becomes too technical. To Sirhindi, wilayat is the idea of qurba. For example, I have notes, but have you seen? I'm not using my notes, but I'll look at a quick note here. So Nafhat Uns, which is Abdul al-Jami, who was a Naqshbandi, and he was a medieval Naqshbandi, and he gathered anecdotal, biographical, narratives of mashayikh and of the spiritual paths, particularly in Transoxania, that is Central Asia, what we would call in the Naqshbandi tradition. And at the beginning of that book, Nafhat Uns, the first thing he talks about is wilayat. What is wilayat? And it's a very standard definition. Now he mentions here that the first thing he says, وَهُوَ مُشْتَقٌ مِنْ وَلَاءَ بِمَعنَى قُرْبٍ. Wilayat comes from the word wala'a, and it means near. to be near, nearness. So we talk about qurba, nearness to Allah. We talk about wilayat, and they're like interchangeable terms. He breaks it down to wilayat am, wilayat khas, general and specific. Wilayat am is what all believers have. Allah Ta'ala says, Allahu waliyul ladhina amanu. Allah is the wali of those who believe. You'll read that with whether it's Jilli or Ibn Arabi or Sufrawardi, or even in the Shia tradition, Mullah Sadra. You're going to see that in Ibn Ata'Allah and Abu Hassan Shadli, and you're going to also see it with Sha'rani. This is you're going to see it when Quraishi's Risala and its discussion on wilayah there, and that's the verse that's going to be cited. Wilayat is something that is inherent of a relationship established between Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and those who affirm Him. But of course, the Quran narrative also implies that there are also darajat. This is not, just a monochromatic existence. There are degrees. There are shuhada, siddiqun, salihun, as-sabiqun, muqarrabun, people of the right, people of the left. This whole framework of hierarchical states is clearly Quranic. As sons and daughters of Adam, and under the aegis of the Muhammadan dispensation, these things are offered to you. To have a sabr, or a status of, preference or foremostness, is inherent in the Muhammadan community. He spoke of his companions, some who were sabiqun, in different narrations. Allah mentions that He has given a karam. لَقَدْ كَرَمْنَا بَنِي Adam. We have shown honor, generosity to the sons and daughters of Adam. But through the Muhammadan dispensation, a person has the capacity to excel. And that capacity of excelment is maximally experienced through the companions. And that's because of their sohbah, their relationship with the Prophet. And that's just it. Because they had a type of qurba with the physical reality of Muhammad. And in just having that, that's why those who fought against him, or those who were the munafiqun amongst him, are asfala safilin, are the worst of creation. This is the extremity of the reality to be around Muhammad. If you're around him this time, you could excel to be Siddiqi, like Abu Bakr, or you could be of the people who are asfala safilin, of the munafiqun, who outstripped the strict kuffar of Quraysh who fought the Prophet. Because these are people who were cloaking themselves in the Muhammadan relationship, but were denying it, which was like a further betrayal of the opportunity Allah offered to humanity. Now, we are generations after that. But the Muhammadan mirah, his legacy, is still pressing it for us, and it exists for us. That's why you have to see yourself as being uniquely positioned. And that allows you then to be able to say to yourself, you deserve it. You can actually say to Allah, give me this. The Rasul taught us to make dua, not to like say, insha, in tasha, if you will, Allah. We speak to Allah in dua with directness. Because there's nothing you can ask Him for except He could give it to you. If you pray for Jannah, pray for Firdaus, He tells us. Why do you settle for just your little foot in it? He tells us of people who, when you look up in Jannah, they're like stars. So, and there are people who look up at like this room here, you know, and they look at these shiny, glittery things here. Who are they? Those are people who prefer others over themselves. When others were asleep, they were standing in prayer. They're described like that. They were Mohammedan more in their nature. If you have no restlessness at night in your satiation when someone you know is near your home without food, then you are still deficient in a Mohammedan state. If you feel that what you have is better than your neighbor, your Mercedes or your Gucci shoes or whatever you have, and that person has just a pair of flip-flops, it's our American term to use, or his old car, he's your brother in faith, and you feel better, then you're deficient in a Mohammedan state. When Rasul walked, as I mentioned this yesterday, he walked with his companions before him, not behind him. But today, ulama walk in front of the congregation, not behind. They march in the streets in front of everyone, but never behind. Because the Prophet was a man who was constantly pushing people forward. He didn't even, his companions rode ahead of him with their camels. He called them as-sabiqun. And he used it as a metaphor for people who rushed towards dhikr, for example. They were crazy in it. You can read this if you read Ibn Rajab's commentary to the 40 hadith, and that's hadith number 50 of the 10 extra ones at the last hadith. Those narrations. So this is your right. And you are entitled to this. But entitlement is an arrogance. Entitlement is like the Prophet was. وَلَا فَخْرٍ. There is no boasting in it. أنا محمد وأنا أحمد. وأنا محي الذي الله يهم به الكفر. I am Mahdi, the facer whom Allah faces kufr. وَلَا فَخْرٍ. And there is no boasting because he acknowledged his true identity. And your identity as a follower is you have rights to this. But if you're a true follower, acknowledging rights, is it still a path to tawaddu, a path of humility. If I'm honest about myself, and people who know me when I talk, most sheikhs you meet in public, they don't talk about themselves. They maintain this position of the sheikh and you. And they rarely just speak about themselves. They maintain this they clearly maintain lines of distinction. And I think most of us are sort of, passively or without really thinking about it, just accept that. But that's not who I am. And I said, I'm wrong. I even tell people don't call me sheikh anymore. And I think in the flyers I said, don't call me that. I don't want to be called that anymore. Whatever title I have accepted or allowed people to throw upon me is not necessarily going to make me or break me. I'm still Gary Edwards, the son of J.B. and Helen Edwards from Crossville, Tennessee. I'll always be Gary Edwards. I'll always be Naeem. But I see myself, I looked at myself. Like for me, for example, there have been many times I just want to not do this whole sheikh thing. Give it up. Get a job at Walmart. Be like everyone else in the street. Keep my prayers, keep my clothes, have my bonsai, have my bike, have my wife, have my kids. My cat just have kittens, be that person. Read my maktubat, do my dhikr. Why not? Just do that. And I really have, and my students have known, I've gone I just want to do that. I want to walk away from all this. But at the same time, Another time he says, but you know, Naeem, this is what Allah's given you, so why then do you just sort of like, why are you denying it? It's a strange, conflicting state to be. And a part of me realized that, well, you know, you have to accept the states, the things He's placed you in, and deal with it. And if you need to go through that whole processing of questioning yourself, and do that, you have to, and go off to a room by yourself, or take a walk in the woods, and have that private conversation. Be like Sayyidina Umar, walk out of the city, go to the desert by yourself, and throw dirt in your face, and do it in private, and you and Allah can struggle with you at that moment. And get up, wipe the dirt off, and get back to your task at hand. That's how I see it. So I've been asking Allah, you make me a passive instrument. Make me an instrument. I just want to be an instrument. If you use me for something good and make me out of that an instrument, I'll be okay with that. It's okay. Just make it that way. And a part of it is the reason I do that is because I get people maybe like you or something like that, and you're a young man, a young woman, and you yearn for something more than what you are as a Muslim. You know inherently there's more to this. You know it's there, and it's always this thing outside your grasp. It's just right there. It's like that constantly receding door in that house of illusion. And the further you get towards it, the further it recedes from you. And you end up in the state of hopeless state of where you feel you're just never going to get it. And you don't want to tell yourself you're going to be 40 years old and just be the same person you are at the age of 21 or 25. And you fear that. You don't have to fear that. Because it's your right to have these things. You were created to know Allah. You were created to know Allah. He has engaged with you even before you were created. How I like to word it out, and this is Naeem's way to contemporarily contextualize it, is this is your moment in 14.7 billion years of cosmic history to make a point. If we just take modern, knowledge of how elements came into being by Allah's permission through stellar actions and within stars and the early universe, we take that narrative as being sound, and it seems it's a pretty good narrative. I don't have a problem with it, and I can use it at least as an instructive tool. If the hydrogen in my body has been around for 14.5 billion years, waiting for this moment, the hydrogen within me, that madda, that element is now at a moment after 14.5 billion years. They're going through maybe once being in a star and out of a star and in some other planet. I don't care. It's a long period of time. I don't know what it means. I can't conceptualize it. And this is its moment of self-awareness, to be a self-aware entity. And this is my moment now. Now, if I take that narrative and then bring it into a Quranic, Sunnic cosmology of being, and I spin it into that and weave it into that, I have now this moment to engage with the best of creation, Muhammad ﷺ, and to maximize the potential within me, in my Adamic, Adam-based, alayhi salam-based Adamic legacy of being human. And I've been offered this moment to follow Muhammad ﷺ, whose qurba exceeds that of other prophets, since he was a prophet when Adam was between water and clay. Then why then would I fritter away my time anymore? It doesn't make any sense to me. And so those hadith, those narrations, for example, whether it's a hadith or one of the athar, or whether it's something of the awliyaullah that have survived, a person will regret the one time he didn't say subhanallah, for example. You'll regret one of those simple things, you know, because all those simple things cumulatively add up to greatness or lack thereof. So this is the choice you should make now if you're 20. Don't wait till you're 50. So you have this is your right. You're entitled to this, and you should seize it. And you shouldn't let anyone stand in your way. If everyone goes, you know, I made this choice when I was 18. I made a choice for Muslim. My family wasn't Muslim, and I made a choice. You know, I'm not an adventurous person. I tell my students that, you know, I'm not adventurous. I could never, when I was 18, hiked across Europe or gone over the Alps or walked across the Sahara with a backpack and gone through each. That's not me, man. I was Gary Edwards in Indiana. You know, I was very happy with that. And I liked to do things, but I wasn't that audacious or brave or courageous. But when I became Muslim, I was convinced I had seized something. And so I chose that. And then when I decided America was just too much for me and I was going down a bad way as a Muslim, it wasn't a benefit, I chose to leave and go overseas, go to Medina. And though it was something I knew I was getting into. And when I got on that bus to Istanbul in 1993, and I just had $100 or so in my pocket and my books, and I was headed on a 2-day bus trip to Istanbul, to a country I'd never been to, across the Middle East. I had no idea what I was getting into, but I was absolutely convinced I had met a man who was going to help me finally. And because I knew I had to know God in a way that I didn't know him yet, and perhaps it was through this way I'd get it, everything I could have done as another different person in a different place, I was able to do that, because I knew this is what I had to do. And now when I look back at that, I know that this is the right of every person. And so I'm such, you know, I'm absolutely, you know, I have students who come to me. I have young men who come to me who are in drugs. Young men who come to me who go to prostitutes. Young men who go to all kinds of stuff, trust me. They all come. Like people you know. And these people want a better life. They want something different. They want to be a good Muslim. You know, I can have a young man sitting in front of me and he's telling me all the stuff he does. I don't even look at him and say he's a bad person. I think that's your context. Let's see what we can do to work with you. Simple. Because I see myself. And I saw myself, I know my own life history, I know who I am, and I know what Allah has done for me. So why then should I ever look down on someone who's in a situation just because they're in that way? Because I've been there, I know what it's like. Not all that stuff I mentioned, but I've done my own things. And yet, Allah has not left us in the lurch. That's your right. So just seize it. And that's why Allah is giving you people like Sirhindis or Abdul Jilani, people like that, these non-Sahaba persons, non-Taba'i, non-Taba'i, non-Salaf in Muslims, not in that great early period of Islam, which had many wonderful people, but people who came later, when history was heavy, and Islam was maybe expansive, also sometimes weak. It wasn't the good old days, and yet these people were there in their communities. And they were beacons, and they were showing what could be, what you are potentially able to receive. But you have to choose what you want to be. And you have to stick to that choice. Like, because in my life, this is what I did. When I was in Turkey, you know, and I married in my wife's family, you know, and I was studying, you know, and they were saying, well, why doesn't Sheikh Naeem, why doesn't Naeem get, they call me, I was just Naeem. Why does Naeem Effendi not get a job? Why isn't like this? And my Sheikh would let me do certain things. He said, you have to study, you have to do this. And I took a lot of guff from my wife's Turkish family. You know, I took a lot. I took it on the streets of Istanbul, walking around with a turban, being yelled at, calling. I remember one day I was called a goat. I had when people try to run me over with a car, just because I looked different. I have felt more Islamophobia or hatred from Turks in Turkey the years I was there than I ever have felt since this current election cycle started. But I didn't give up. I didn't give up. I spent a number of days in jail because of my turban. I didn't give up. Just for a turban. I could have easily taken it off, but I chose not to. You know? So, you know, life is just that way. But I know that you don't see yourself as incapable. And yes, you are deserving of all these things. And you should, each of you should honor that, and you should pursue it, because ultimately what this is all about is being so transformed that the thing you wanted from Islam and the Muslim you wanted to see would find that person in the mirror in front of you. And when you actually are at that place, you'll still see yourself deficient, you'll still see yourself lacking, you'll still see yourself in need, because you'll actually start to experience what impoverishment is. Because Allah will always be beyond the beyond, and you will never meet up to a standard. That's okay. You see, you never will be that, like, content. How could you be content? I asked my shaykh once, how many sunnahs are there? He said they're innumerable. How do you restrict Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam? You can't. And you start thinking like that, it's a really amazing thing you're offered. But in the process, there are some goodies that come with it. The goodie, for example, a goodie in your life could be that you're able to read the Quran in a way and things just synthesize in front of you, meanings, understandings that you never had before. You're able to connect the Sunnah with the Quran in a way that you didn't see before, and it makes so much sense all of a sudden. In my personal life journey, you know, it started like 2004. I'm just telling you this stuff because, you know, I'm really honest with you, because I can't. I'm a skeptic at times. I'm a doubter. I've doubted things. I've wondered why it's this way. I question severely, not to be problematic to the community, but because I have to question. I need to know why. And I told this to my students, you know, it was 2004. When I was in Arizona. I just came to a point in my life. Why am I making these prayers? Why does Allah want me to pray? Why a prayer like this? Why do we do these salah like this? What about these ruku and sajda and all this stuff? And then it was a point in my life when I had serious questions. So how I got answers, and how I resolved that, I would sit in my dhikr, I would do my muraqabah, my meditation, which I had been doing, and I would in that state, I would literally just pose these questions to Allah. Help me to understand what these things mean. And it was that time in my life that things began to like really pour into me. I'm not saying this to boast. I'm just saying this is what happened. I began to connect things. And over the years, I've been able to see things. And it's not because I'm special, it's because I actually believe this is the birthright of every believer. This is a simple, it's not like you're special, you're human. And this is the right of followers of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You're given the Quran to engage with it, to understand it, to take meaning, and to have satisfactory, spiritually satisfactory, intellectually satisfactory answers, and ones that are a synthesis of the text, of the corpus of tradition, whether it's the Quran or the Sunnah. And that's what you start seeing when you start seeing like Sirhindis or other great ones, and how they're able to take verses of Quran and Hadith and weave them together and get out meaning, and how they do that. Well, it's a simple thing. They were heirs. And that arid state is for everyone. It's that most of us choose Josie Mosey. We choose bananas and walnuts, and we go on with life like that. See, Sirhindis teaches us in the Maktubah. You say La ilaha, you go to Jannah. This is a promise. You're a person of salvation. People who have nafs amara, who follow their nafs, will go to Jannah because they have La ilaha, Muhammad Rasulullah, and they have Allah's karam and His maghfirah, which pulls them in because of the fundamental they hold, the truth that they hold. And yet they go with their nafs amara. They go to Jannah kicking and screaming. And there they will be fulfilled. But mostly there are people who are looking up. And there'll be others who made other choices, who chose to follow the Prophet in more deeper ways. You know, if you're laying down at night, you go to bed, and it doesn't bother you why you're not laying on your right side facing the Qibla, even if it came to your mind. If it came to your mind, you're laying on your right side, and you're not, and you know about laying on your right side facing the Qibla as the Sunnah, and you still sleep on your left side facing east, that's your state. It's when laying on your right side facing the Qibla and you don't do it disturbs you. It's then you begin to understand what I'm talking about. It disturbs you. Why aren't you that way yet? Why have you not yet seated yourself to love? And that's really fana. Well, that's a fruit of fana, by the way. That you would be disturbed by that. And that's your birthright. Because you are a follower of Muhammad Sallallahu. That's your birthright. That's your right as a member of this ummah. And believe me, this is the kind of people we need. So as a young person, and this reason I'm here. This is the reason I'm here in the UK, and this is where I should just over the years, I've been in this path for a number of years. My students know that I do not solicit, I do not allow any of my students to advertise a spiritual path. No website. If you're talking to someone, you cannot talk about the tariqah. You can do these things. I forbid it. We are not marketing anything. If someone comes, you're well welcome to come and ask me a question. I'll talk to you about it. And I'll say, you should go to Sheikh Yaqubi, you should go to Sheikh Nu, you should go to Sheikh so-and-so. Trust me, go to their doors. Go. Because it's a headache, trust me. It's a headache. Because the job isn't to proselytize. The job is to inspire people to make choices. And when I went to Turkey, and I engaged in the spiritual path in that space, when I walked in, I didn't know what I was doing. I just walked in there because I met this man, Masjid Nabawi, Mahmoud Effendi, and I've been looking for a sheikh. That's why I was in Medina to look for a sheikh, and I spent almost every day after Asr, I was in Masjid Nabawi for almost a year and a half, meeting all kinds of people. And I met this man who was my nasib, who was my rizq was placed with him. At the grave of the Prophet, right at the maqam. That's where I met him the first time. And istikhara was good, go to Turkey. I still didn't think about this path, but I knew I met someone I was very attracted to. That, yeah, this is it. Now let's see what's going to happen. I know what I was getting into. And I got there, the first thing Sheikh Mahmoud said to me in his own room after he said, Assalamu alaikum, ta'akharta, you're late. And he put me in the madrasa, and it was a really shabby place to live, and my story was really interesting, and there were fleas and bed bugs, and it was all kind of, and for a month I was in this secret madrasa because it was all illegal. This stuff was illegal in Turkey in the 1990s at the time. And then after a month of being there, finally I gave me like the bayat in the spiritual path, and I asked, why is he waiting for a whole month? I've been here for a month now. And they said, well, he wanted you to be comfortable here. Were you going to stay here? He knew if you'd be comfortable or not. So you want to initiate something, and then you might go back to America or something like that, because you couldn't live in Turkey in 1993. Because there are no other Westerners there. And this was a community of men with beards and turbans living under those governments in the 1990s. They were already scrutinized by the police and all these people. So I was jumping into like a red zone, literally. So he wanted me to be sure that I was going to be comfortable. The fact that a U.S. passport helped a lot, because that sort of was a shield Allah gave me against being arrested, against many things. It was also a bane, because many of the Turks I was around, they thought I was a spy. That's how they were. They were obsessed with stuff like that. I was a jasus, an American spy, to come and spy on them, as if they had some great secret, you know, or something like that. They were like big-headed, I swear, but never the sheikh. He was never like that. Even once on my wedding day, and he did my nikah, and my family was in America, he wasn't there, and he came, it was just my wife, and it was like, when we were upstairs, it was like the wedding, we did the nikah, and it was like the wedding party afterwards, you know, and it was just, you know, her uncle, my dad, my father-in-law, some uncles, and stuff like that. It was a few people, and Sheikh Mahmoud actually came, and he sat there, and he told this whole story of Salman al-Farisi, who was Salman al-Farisi, and he was talking in Turkish, and then he put his hand on my thigh, and he said, Naeem is our Salman. Because I had this guy who came from America, went to Medina, came across to Turkey, and I did all this journeying to find this person. So he said, he's our Salman. And it was like a big honor for me. I thought I'd change my name to Salman, you know. That was my mindset, which I didn't, you know. Probably should have. But the point is, I knew what I was getting into, but I gave, and I struggled, man, I struggled. I go to Sheikh Mahmoud and said, what is faith? Faith, you know, faith. What's this faith? Faith. I had to experience faith. He said, it's muhabba, hub, sevgi in Turkish love. How do you visualize love? These are the kind of questions I would ask, you know. So he's a typical, you know, not typical, but he's a Turkish sheikh, you know, and to him it's all makes so much sense. And to me, as this, you know, downing American guy, it's like I got all these questions, you know. Well, what does it mean? Then he said, it's love. How do you visualize love? And he was like, you know, he was like explaining to me, he said, you know what? I should call Byram Hojab, who we used to read Maktabat with. And he said, told an assistant, call Byram Hojab to come in. And so Byram Hojab came. He said, Byram Effendi, I want you to explain Naeem Effendi what phase is. And I need to leave the room. So Sheikh Mahmoud got, I remember this day so well. He got up, and Sheikh Mahmoud got up, and he left. And so Byram Hojab was explaining it to me. And that's the Sheikh's room. And then I remember Effendi was at the door. It was just his own room. And he someone knocked on the door. And Sheikh Mahmoud, he opened the door and said, I don't want to bother you. Let me come in for a minute. He grabbed something and left. And it was like, you know, I found a man who was free. He was liberated. He was so free. He was almost childish at times. He had thousands of followers, people in government, everyone, you know, it's like, you know, and yet he was so free. And to experience that freedom is a wonderful thing, to be free. That's a fruit of fana, to be free. And you and every person, we all have the right to this, but we don't pursue this. Because it's oftentimes a lot of hard work, and it's making choices, and sometimes it's uncomfortable. So believe me, you know, you are entitled to this, because you've been given a title before you, Ibn Adam, min Ummat Muhammadi, from the Muhammadan Ummah, a son of Adam. Welcome to the threshold. But many will come to the threshold, but few will pass over it. That's the problem. It's just like we Muslims are. We make resolves in Ramadan. We want so much, but we struggle so much to stumble a lot. When it doesn't have to be that way. Your ego gets in your way, this gets in the way, I don't know, your wife gets in the way, your husband gets in the way, your mom gets in the way, the cat gets in the way, the car gets in the way, I don't know what gets in the way. So, yeah. So I'm just being honest with you, you know, and it's not boasting, because there's nothing to boast about, because I realized I didn't do anything. I just listened, and I accepted, and I walked, and I struggled, and I wanted to give up at times. I remember once I was with Sheikh Mahmoud, and I said, here, I went to him, they worked on the tafsir. I went in, I sat down, I said, here, take my tasbih. I gave it to him, I put it in his blessed hands, here, take my tasbih. He said, well, what's wrong, Naeem Effendi? I said, well, you know, this is the work of men, not the work of children. I said, I can't do this. It's for men to do this work, this dhikr and all this stuff, you know, I just can't. And he just looked at me as he would look, and he put the tasbih back in my hand. He said, Naeem Effendi, We all start out as children, but we become men. That's all I needed to hear. We all start out as children, but we become Rijal in time. It's a simple thing, but you have to choose to be a man in Rijala. And it also applies to women. That Rijala quality is for women too. It's true believer status. That neither business or trade distract them from remembrance of Allah. That they fulfill their promises and covenants that they give, even unto death. And these Quranic understandings. Who stand or standing, reclining, sitting in the remembrance of Allah. Whose tongues are always moist in the remembrance of Allah. Whose hearts are open because taqwa resides in here. And they've poured Allah's name in there so much that they become shiny and it becomes a polish for them. These are men. This is Rijala. Masculinity in Islam is not an issue of hormones or facial hair. It's propheticness. And this is what we need. So it's all there for you. So don't think you can't be that. It's just that you'll have to make those choices. And I don't, that's why I'm critical of Mashai. I'm critical because I think in many Mashayikh, they don't really encourage their followers to really excel all the time. I think there's too much investment on other areas. Because this is a very profitable thing to do. It's very marketable. So, all I give is tawfiq. That's my first response to your question. It was a long answer. I went off many things. Anyone have anything else you want to ask before we wrap it up? I have to go back to beautiful Luton Sharif. Ask a piece of paper. Can you elaborate on Nubuwwat, especially by the Sahaba? As I have heard before, Sahaba experienced tasawwuf but never spoke about it, i.e. they never exposed their states. Example, when Abdul ibn Masud sat down in the market with the Messenger of peace upon him, was in the masjid. Like, and okay. Well, according to Sirhindis, it didn't exist. The self didn't exist. If the self means reliant, like this phenomenon, it didn't exist. This did not exist. Nubuwwat is an experiential state of Allah. This is a very simple definition he gives, where duality is maintained. Remember my example of this? Go back to this, right? If your zikr is so intense with vulvic, right? And you bring it up to your eyes, what do you see? Only vulvic. Does the rest of the world exist around you? Of course it does. Do you perceive it visually? No, you don't. Is your mushahada, is your state of shuhud of the rest of the world? No. What are you seeing? Vulvic. But is the real world kharij, outside there, actually existing? Yes, it is. It's going on normal. But your perceptual state, it doesn't exist anymore. So your dhikr is so intense, it's like that. The companions did not experience something like that. They were always aware of themselves, of the things around them. Omar could stand in prayer and organize his soldiers in prayer, yet he still had a prophetic prayer, a prayer of Nubuwwat. Because the Prophet ﷺ would pray with his eyes open. He never closed his blessed eyes. He could see the world and yet be with the perfect salah. While you only attain to concentration when your eyes are closed. Because you have to close the world to get something out of your prayer. Your eyes. Close it off. But not the blessed man, Muhammad ﷺ. It's like that. So, As for ahwal or states, this is a Sufi construct, ahwal. We can talk, what does that mean? You're talking about jazb or types of ecstatic experiences. Sirhindis will talk about maqamat, the maqamat, tawbah, ending up with rida, shukr, tawakkul, which are prophetic in nature, and they're part of the spiritual path. And those things the companions had. They had tawakkul, they had shukr, they had rida. Well, they had all those qualities we speak about. Because those are qualities which the Prophet talked about. And they had them. They trusted. They believed. They were sincere. They fulfilled their covenants. And that's what we all want. Those are the things you want. That's what you should have. That's one of the fruits of the state. But they didn't get it because they were ecstatically dancing around the Masjid Nabawi in a state. Allah. No, man. They were just doing their stuff every day. But they're in the presence of the Prophet, and that presence altered them. It was as simple as that. How did it happen? It just altered them. It wasn't like they had, and then they had to work within that, you see? Get this point. They still at times argued with each other. And Bilal was still called by another Sahaba, what? You son of a black woman. And that man who said that still what? Had some jahiliyyah in him. You see? Because there's always something you struggle with. This is what he talks about, unlike other mashayikh. The jihad continues, but it's not the jihad of the nafs anymore, it's the jihad of the animal physicality. Passions, anger, which come out, jahalat. That's just a human capacity, nature of the self with the physicality you have. It's there. This is, he talks about, first he will call this is in your qalib, in your physical frame. So for Sirhindi, jihad akbar isn't jihad against the nafs, it's jihad against the physical body. So when you have a state of fana, which means that your nafs is not in a state of itnan, that's no terminology for it, you are in a state of internal contentment. You are in a state of rida. But you will always have to struggle with your body. Hence, almost every explicit command in the Quran of a prescription of something which is tahrim or forbidden deals with something of the body. Where did you say on your tongue, riba? Where did you put your hand? Did you steal? A contract, which is a verbal testimony or something you wrote. Did you commit adultery? All very physical. Because you will always struggle with the body. So the Sharia exists to frame that in. The contentment is to make sure you're content with that Sharia command. Manifestation through physical expression. So for Sirhindi, this whole idea of tasawwuf is a necessary innovation, just as fana is a necessary experience to allow people to. It's like things get sort of worn down to a state, and you need like a synergist. You need a charge in order to reboot it. So a state of fana is like a rebooting operation for a person to get them back to where they should be in relationship to the prophetic emanative state called the Sharia. Prophetic emanative state, I like that. Which is the Sharia. Because all the Sharia is what? What is the Sharia? It is simply the outworking and codifying of the Muhammadan reality. Muhammadan as the man. Pray as you see me pray. Do business as you saw me do business. Because I'm following the Quranic commands, whether it's business transactions or contracts or marriage and all these things, that's the Sharia. So basically the Sharia is for each person to operationalize for themselves something of the Prophet. That's all you're doing. That's all it is. So we each become little loci of Muhammadan manifestation if you're really Sharia compliant. I don't just mean halal certification. How do we seek reliance of law in an age of technology? Well, that's technology. Oh, the God of the ages. Stop with a capital, with a small g. We love our technology. Man loves his ability to manipulate nature. He boasts in that. Our age is plagued with it. I think that you have to, well, I broke my phone, you know, so that was one technological thing, but I still have my Mac computer. I still have to call the bank up. I still have to communicate with them because they do that and I have to. And I still have a car, you know, I have electricity, you know, it would be nice to get rid of all that stuff, probably better for the whole planet for all of us. But unfortunately, that would be me dreaming or living in a commune in Oregon, which I don't plan on doing. I don't know why I want to do that. How do you do it? You should make choices, especially the ones that are very socially interactive. Especially the technology like the phones and stuff, they can be very engaging. We become very, very attached to visual stimuli in our generation. Through, you know, whether it's YouTube or whatever it is, we're very engaged, it engages. It also is very, because we are visual entities, we are so focused as visual creatures, that's very hard for us to disengage, which we're naturally inclined towards. So you just have to make some choices in your life for this stuff. Utilize it, but you need to take time out of your life, put it aside when it should be put aside, and engage with people, really talking with them, and just make yourself mindful, and get others to be mindful of that too. It's just a little hard work. You just work at it, you know, prioritize it. You know, I should really talk with people. I should really sit down with my family. I should actually talk to my neighbors. You know, I can sit down and really read something with like a book in my hand instead of necessarily on an iPad or something like that. I can actually engage with Victor with a mitzvah in my hand instead of like doing electronic counter on my phone. You know, I guess it's the same. I don't know. I like this better, but you know, whatever. But I think you have to make those choices. And I think that, you know, that's something that you can easily go online and discuss and find where there are groups and discussion groups and real people out there who are not even Muslim maybe, who are really asking as parents and as educators, whatever, how do we deal with that? And you'll get some probably good feedback from that. You don't need to shake so-and-so to tell you to do that, because he's probably just looking for his iPad, Googling an answer anyway. I'm just saying, it's not going to go away unless we have a major solar flare and wipes our technology, you know, if that happens, you know, then we'll go back to the 1970s, and I'll be able to deal with it because I was a kid of the 70s, you know, so I'll survive it. But you poor kids, you know, I'm sorry for you. You'll be so lost with all your technology. You have to learn to talk to people really, and, you know, just look at, you know, and maybe pick up a phone and you dial it, you know. And remember I was a kid, we used to pick it up and dial it and pull the cord around, you know, and that was it. But I'm just saying, it's not an easy thing, but you can make choices in your life what you want to do with them. And of course, you know, you have so much access to so much. I think, for example, I use the internet. I go to tafsir.com, and I have access to electronic tafsir, so it sure saves me spending $10,000 on bookshelf. Same thing. It's the same thing I was reading in a bookshelf. So I use that, for example. It's very convenient for me. I don't have a problem with that. But if I'm just spending my time with Netflix or something like that, and I like to go. I do science documentaries, or philosophy, or I go to BBC, Radio 4 and listen to In Our Time. You know, I always get the weekly podcast because I like those programs. I learn because I'm using it really as a learning tool. But if it's just entertainment or distraction or you're bored, well, then you should start asking yourself, why are you bored? Maybe because you're a kid of technology and you just need constant stimulation. So maybe that's where you need to really ask yourself, how do I get out of that? And try to find means to do that. I know it's a real struggle point for many young people. And of course, there are a lot of things that are haram, that are easily accessible, more than ever, and a lot of young Muslims get involved in that. And that's a very dangerous thing, because that can really mess you up. Because one thing that happens when you do this is that it creates a very serious guilt complex in yourself. It's hard to extract yourself from. You feel yourself as being filthy and dirty a lot, and you don't know how to do about it, or it's very addictive. And that's a real issue. I have a number of young men who keep sending me emails about that. How do we deal with that? And so there are some real danger points there, because these are very much the distractions that the classical scholar would have spoken about, but never imagining it in this concentrated state or ability to get exposed to it. And I really believe as Muslims, from that point, you really have to, as Muslims in our generation, it's a time to make some serious choices of lifestyle right now. What you want to live. Okay. What does community mean? What does it mean to have a Muslim community? How do we create sustainable communities? In a period of energy transition, global population, environmental change. These are really things that should be on your mind. God-centered communities that are not oppressive or cultic or cultish or, isolationist necessarily, as they might be oftentimes. These are things you should be thinking about. So technology, for me personally, is trying to engage myself with other things. So for me, it's either reading, writing, dhikr, the things I do. People who know me, the things I do. But I'm not anyone else in this room. I'm a 51-year-old man, so I have a different life journey. I've experienced the life without technology for most before the 1990s and after. So it's different for me. I know what it's like not to have video games. I know what it's like not to have access to knowledge like that at your fingertips. I know what it's like to go to a library and look through cards and find a book on a shelf. And I lived in a world when that was the normal thing you did. That was normal. And this stuff, we never could have imagined it. So that's my advice. I mean, you're really going to have to find some ways to come up with some solutions on that. And I think that's where you as young people in your own communities, you should come together and really have these discussions, like how are we, I really thought, I think it's really how you want to spend your time, how you think you should be as a human being, and what values you have in front of you. Maybe, you really need to ask yourself what values you want. What does friendship mean to you? What does fellowship mean to you? What does brotherhood mean to you? What does family mean to you? What does social engagement mean to you? Define those terms. Anyway. I think we better stop because I think we need to drive back to Luton. So that's what I want to share with you. I hope that's a little bit about my promise. Now, the thing about this is, before I leave, is that from Sirhindis, I think that Imam Rabbani has a lot to offer. Those of us in the Naqshbandi tradition, this is not a plug for Naqshbandis, by the way, but many Mashaykh I know who I've talked with at different levels, I think they all have understood. Even we had a guest last night, we were talking about the letters. Because, when I was in Turkey, and I would read these letters, we had private lessons, and over the years as we read them, we sort of began to deconstruct them. And it's like a puzzle. And we began to actually understand things, like put things together, because there are a lot of ideas there that are scattered. And you have to sort of construct what's going on. And I found, when I first started teaching these letters in around 2000, when I came to my very first Rihla kind of program outside of Turkey, I came to London at Hanzo Mosque. And that's the first time ever in public I read the letters of Ahmed Sirhindi as English translation. I think it was 2001, or was 2001, I believe. I went to Hanzo, and it was a Ramadan program for 10 days, and first time I ever did that. And it was a very positive experience with people. I broke down his understandings of tasawwuf and tariqah, and I explained it according to him, and it made a lot of sense to people. And over the years, I found that this book makes a lot of sense to people, not as a proselytizing agent for a spiritual path, but help them to contextualize the concepts of Sharia and tariqah, tasawwuf, and even metaphysical discussions, ontological discussions. For example, his analysis of Ibn Arabi, etc., etc., etc. It's very valuable. And over the years, I've been translating it slowly. I've done many letters I've translated and stuff, but I've been so busy as an imam and a khatib and all that stuff, that was like a ball and chain on my legs, and it was just, I did it, and I was teaching, which that imam stuff was a ball and chain. I'm honest about that. I'll never go back to that again. I'll never do that again. May Allah protect me from that. But I was also teaching fiqh. I was also teaching aqidah. I was doing all these things I studied in Turkey that I got ijazah in to teach these books. But we have heaps of people now teaching that stuff. And personally, I find it fascinating, but I don't want to spend time just reading fiqh to people all the time, or reading Aqidah again. Let someone else do it. So I finally made a decision, like a major milestone decision in my life, that I need to devote myself to this book and translate it with commentary and put it out there as a reference for people, of references for them in our age. But to do that, we also want to go out there and, like I used to do, is go out into the public and start talking about these concepts, like I did with you today, bring up these ideas to encourage people to think, not about being an Naqshbandi or something, about the potential you have. Like this idea of wilayah, it's there for you. There are many paths to find it. Well, if it's a path you can get on, go seek it then. And don't let anyone hold you back. Desire God first, and then everything else will fall in place. And I speak to it because I made that choice, and I don't think I made a bad choice when I was 18. And over the years, I don't think they were bad choices. So we were in this project we decided to start in February, is to set out, a group of us at Houston, to translate this book. And our vision is this: we want to translate this text into English, good English. Then we want to put this with commentary. My idea is to take this book and connect it with many Mashaykh, including Ibn Arabi, Qanawi, Al-Adal al-Samnani, who preceded him, contextualize it with many of the Mashaykh who are post-Sirhindi, whether it would be Shah Waliullah, or Qadi al-Din of Damascus, Nablusi, and tie in their understandings of Sirhindi's thought as they have seen it articulated, to discuss Sirhindi's ideas of his ontological discussions. We don't have that anymore in our community. No one discusses ontology anymore. We left that. We don't even, like yesterday and in Germany, I was trying to bring up ideas of Heidegger. You see, there have been comparisons between Mullah Sadra, who was a Shia metaphysician of the 18th century, and comparing him to Mullah Sadra. But we don't have, for example, a discussion of Ibn Arabi, like Sirhindi's understanding of his ontological understandings, let's say, for example, in a contemporary context with Heidegger. You might think it's very strange, but Heidegger is a very influential Western philosopher who has really altered Western philosophy, especially areas of ontology. You may think it's not even important, but these things are always important. Understanding why things are, why you exist, these deeper questions. We don't even talk about this anymore. It's like they're like out there, it's not even an important discussion anymore. And we are, in a sense, I think that we as a community, because of that, generally, we are poor because of that. So I decided that I want to spend my rest of my time while I'm on this planet is doing this, because I've done too many other things. But my passion was here. And so reaching out into these communities, I wanted to start exposing people like yourself. There's this legacy that we have that many of your elders even know about, or they've heard about, but they don't even, they just heard about it. Like in this message, I'm sure there are men here who are from Pakistan who've heard of Ahmed Mujaddid al-Fatani, or when they sat in a session in Karachi or someplace and they heard a reading of the Maktubat one time in their life or a few times in their life from the Urdu translation, but that was it. And never knowing the significance of this man's writings in the legacy of Islam. We all know about Ghazali, Ibn Arabi, many of the Shali traditions, whether it is Ibn Ta'Allah, have been now made available in the English language, but not really from this tradition. So our endeavor is to bring this to our Muslim community. And so I kickstarted this by coming to the UK, coming to the UK and giving talks, trying to connect people to Sirhindi, to think about ideas about transformation, which I think is what he's about. And of course, all of those are about that too. But it's better to put more options on the table and for these discussions. We need these discussions as community. And in the same process, we wanted people who were like, are you interested in like being participating in this project in any way? And though I don't like to discuss that, but we felt like, you know, we need to make this a public project. We need to let people understand that we need to be trying to engage with tradition and with deep reflective thought. And I think we have a legacy, especially from the subcontinent, of many great Mashayikh, awliyaullah, who left us a great tradition, but we were not familiar with it. Or it stays within only a Persian Urdu language base, and it stays there, captured there. And I think that it's time that we work to extract it from that. And that's what we want to do. So Yusuf Beg, who's one of my students in Houston, you know, really it was their emphasis in this. You know, I'll be honest with you, you know, I was happy to go get a job at Walmart. I'd be happy with, you know, just get all the mosque, get all the minbar stuff, get all the khatib, Juma stuff. I just couldn't do that anymore. I don't want to do it anymore. But my students said, you know, you really need to, Sheikh Naeem, you need to work on this. This is something that you have a passion for, and we need to work on. And so I'll be honest with you, in this thing that is in his hand, it's like there's a budget of our projections. Part of that, there's like a money breakdown. That money breakdown has nothing to do with me personally. We are a limited group of people, but we know we have to produce a high quality text. We are hoping that, and it's a Houston-based group, we will not be dependent upon anyone for this. That's what we're hoping for. And I think we're going to try to shoot for that. But we also realize we should make it an offer, because there's always a khair in this. Our objective is to just raise enough funds, and this is, I hate to talk about this stuff, but I feel like I'm a prostitute. I really hate talking about this. I'm so uncomfortable right now, because we want to be able to produce a high quality text. And I don't want something which is just, you know, it's just deserving. We talked with Joseph Lombard, who came, you know, he's on the committee he was one of the main translators for the Study Quran, which is, for example, a very problematic text. So Joseph Lombard, who I know personally, he came to Houston about 2 months ago, wasn't it? He came to Houston, and it was a second tour in the United States to explain the process of producing the Study Quran. So that was at University of Houston. So I was there with a number of our local Imams. I was pretty quiet. I let everyone else ask the hard questions, because they had the same questions I had, especially the issues of perennialism that were brought up in that text, which are legitimate concerns. But what I want to talk to Joseph Lombard was not about perennialism, because, you know, let others wrestle with him on that. I want to know how he spent 10 years on this project. How did they work on this project? How were they able to, how did he spend the time translating and researching it and devoting himself to that? Because it was a 10-year project. Because I had this intention, this book needs to be done. So I was really picking his mind about the process. But the fact is that at any process, it's not something which is done in a vacuum. We want to produce a high quality text, and our intention, Allah will give us that, we will do it. Our exposure now with many Mashayikh that we've been talking with, I've been speaking with, is they are very much encouraging us to do this, because it needs to be done. This is a text that needs to be brought out to our community. And I'll tell you this, if you understood Sirhindis' place in Islamic history, everyone from Shah Waliullah to those that came after him, and many of the Muslim movements that have occurred in the past 150 years or more, have been almost influenced by his thought. Absolutely, the historical ties are there, which maybe that's a different lecture at a different time. I should have that talk to show that. So this is our proposal. If there's anything about money, it's mentioned there, which there is, it is only that goes to editing, paper, nothing else. If it is not me. So I have my own money, I have an income, this is it. It doesn't go to a car, to a road trip or anything, or buy me a villa, blah, 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 you know, and it's absolutely nothing like that. But we will, we're looking hopefully to collect funds where anyone who does that will be given absolute clarity and open books, and everything that is spent is shown with accountability. So it will never come back to me that this was something, there was a scheme, because it's not a scheme. And so you can take this if you want. If you don't want it, that's fine. So that's my here for. I wasn't here for that. I've been asked to talk about. Personally, I just talked about this and walked away. When I came in these talks, you know, he knows this. He knows who I am. There was this whole discussion about, well, should there be an honorarium for Sheikh Naeem? I said, what? And I heard that there was a discussion through Skype. That someone said this and someone said that, and I immediately got hold of Yusuf. I said to him, that is absolutely, the organizers know that. No way. I know Mashaykh who charge $2,000, $5,000 a talk. It's very common, trust me. We don't do that. All I said, if I go to England, if they offer me a cup of tea and a place to sleep, I'll be happy with that. This is a book that doesn't exist in English yet. I have put a sample here of an attempt of a sheikh whose name I won't mention, in a country I won't mention, but I was given a translation of his volume 1 in English. I put that sample there. You can read it, good luck. I asked one of his students, why did he not get an editor for this? And I was simply told, it was a very Marid answer. The sheikh did it, and the sheikh felt that in this way, the way he wrote it was faithful to the original. But I said, it's nonsensical in English. I mean, the English is, I'm not quite sure it's English. I respect the task, but that will not satisfy an English audience. So I put a sample of a couple of my translations in here. This to give you a taste of how I would approach translating it. And that's just translation. It has nothing to do with commentary. This is a book that is a powerful book that needs to be translated. I want to get it out there. And I sit at home with my son Ahmed. I open the book up. This is our task now. I read it. When I'm reading there, I read it and I just translate it to him. So my son is typing, getting cramps, and that's it. So I'm just letting my son do it. I mean, that's it. You know, it's just my son right now. I'm not hiring anyone. You know, it's just my son. And he's going to do it. And I promised I would pay him. So we wrap up and stuff. We ask Allah to give us barakah in this gathering. Ask Allah to give us barakah in this night, in this masjid, in this house that has been established with your name, Ya Rabbi. We ask you, Allah, by the hurmah of Sayyidina Muhammad, to give us fairness, Ya Rabbi. Allah, if there was good mentioned tonight, Allah, then give us the good in it. Allah, if there was that which was a mistake or an error, we ask you to forgive us if we are weak, Ya Rabbi. We ask you, Allah, that the lives of the true awliya, those who are near to you, Allah, are made known to us, so we can learn from them and benefit from Ya Rabbi. We ask Allah to give us the ability to follow Muhammad closer and closer and closer, Ya Rabbi. We ask God to give us light before us, light behind us, light above us, light below us, light to our right, light to our left, Ya Rabbi. We ask God to forgive us of our sins, inward and outwardly. We ask God to write us amongst the righteous, amongst the followers of Muhammad sallallahu Subhanaka Allahumma wa bihamdik. Nashhadu an la ilaha illa ant. Nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. Wa sallallahu ala Muhammad wa alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Alhamdulillah alameen. And I ask Allah to reward you all for being patient for tonight. Thank you for coming. And may Allah only leave us with good, inshallah. Jazakumullah khair. Okay. Okay.